Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Wells Fargo Beyond College webinar series. I am Mosika Medlock with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And without further ado, I'll pass the reins to our esteemed host, Dewey Norwood.
Hey, Mosika, thank you so much for the kind introduction. And we're really excited to be on with you and the TMCF team today and all of our amazing scholars that are joining us for the third installment here of the year of the groundbreaking Beyond College webinar series. Remember, team, we've got a 1-2 punch here for the month of March, and today is all about resume writing. I will tell you, we've got some solid content. I've had an opportunity to review the deck a little bit in advance, and we've got some masterful presenters that are going to be sharing some really, really great information with you throughout today. So, hey, it's not too late. Go ahead and send a tweet. Go ahead and throw it on LinkedIn, throw it on your social media channels, and tell folks to come join us here for the Beyond College webinar series. All right, as we continue on, you'll see my information here on the next slide. Dewey Norwood, 24 years now in the financial services industry as of March, and very fortunate to be leading work around our higher education partnerships and also the work that's focusing on our firm-wide HBCU strategies. So really excited to be on with everyone today. The QR code will point over to my LinkedIn. Same rules as last time. You get $3 if you connect with the kid on LinkedIn. Do not cash the check you get in the mail from me, though, asking for $3. I'm only kidding. But hey, let's get connected and let's continue the engagements in different spaces from there. Hey, as we move through, I do want to talk just a little bit about the firm so you have a sense of the scope and the reach of our institution. If you had a highlighter, I would ask you to spotlight $1.9 trillion in assets. Being able to have 1 in 3 households here in the United States, 1 in 3, will have a banking relationship in some way, shape, or form with our institution. 69 million customers around the globe. Almost 27 million customers connecting in through the mobile devices and the platforms that everyone is so used to nowadays. So I hope that it gives you a sense of the scope and the reach of our institution that's coming up on, my goodness, our 170th anniversary here not too long from now. So a little bit there about Wells Fargo. As we continue on, I think it's important just to take a moment and spotlight the global impact that the firm is providing. And you'll see here a link to a press release from earlier this week spotlighting Wells Fargo's humanitarian efforts and relief to support those in the Ukraine. And you will notice the funding of $1 million of financial support that the firm is providing, connecting in through groups like the American Red Cross and through the World Central Kitchen, and of course, through the USO, to making sure those that are impacted, that have the greatest needs, we're trying to find a way to have those needs met in the way that we can from a financial support perspective. So please scan this QR code that will take you over to the press release there to be able to learn more about that important work. And I just wanted you all to make sure you had a sense of the work that's happening from a global perspective within our institution. As we bring it a little closer to home on the next slide, I think we'll talk a little bit about some of the work that we're doing in the higher education space. Again, if you have that highlighter out, I would circle that number of $97 million of financial support that's being provided to higher education groups and organizations to support scholars like you all that are on, or recent graduates, or even high schoolers, being able to provide financial support to help you along your college journey, and then ultimately to be able to graduate and go into the industries of your choice. And so really excited again about that $97 million of financial support over the last 10 years, and also the dollars that were provided to meet emergency needs amidst the pandemic. And so again, that just gives you a sense of some of the strategic investments that our firm has made with each of you all in mind. Hey, with that said, I think I've covered off on the items that I want to touch on here. I want to hand the reins over to a trusted partner in Betsy Burton-Strump from TMCF. Betsy, we're so glad to be on the lines with you for today. Want to give you the reins for a couple of moments to greet all of our folks that are joining us, and then we'll run through our agenda and get to the real stars. Because Betsy, let's be honest, they didn't come here to see us.
I don't know, Dewey.
What you told me earlier was that they all came to see me, but I didn't really believe you then. Anyways, well, we're so delighted that all of you showed up today because you are, as Dewey said, you're going to get a lot of really good information. As I shared with our TMCF team, they can take the information and share it with their colleagues and not use it themselves. Anyways, Thurgood Marshall College Fund has been around for 35 years this year, and we work with the historically Black colleges and universities and predominantly Black institutions, and primarily the state-supported organizations or schools, including schools like North Carolina A&T and FAMU, Howard, et cetera. But we work with all HBCUs, supporting nearly 300,000 students. The great thing about the programs that we offer is we're really focused on educational excellence and student success. So we want to make sure that our scholars graduate, and they graduate with as little student loan debt as possible. And I suspect most of you on the call have some form of student debt, and we really want to make sure that you're finding ways to mitigate that as much as possible. We know there are a lot of first-generation scholars and first-generation corporate scholars, and so we want to support you and your journey as well. And events like this today, and like the event on the 24th of March, I'm sure you're writing that down in your calendar right now, are really important tools to put in your toolkit. And this year alone, we're going to be managing over 100 different scholarship programs. So why does this matter? If you look at the next slide, you'll see our mission. The mission of Thurgood Marshall College Fund is to ensure student success by promoting educational excellence, which includes through your initiatives, through your school, but also through our programs, through our professional development and leadership development programs, and really creating the next generation of workforce talent. With that said, and feel free, when Dewey said he's not going to give you the $3, I don't think, but he has a lot of connections and networks. So you really, really should hit him up on your LinkedIn, and feel free to hit me up as well. I'm going to turn it back over to Dewey so that, as he said, we get into the meat of this thing.
There you go.
So have fun, and thanks for being here.
That's Betsy Burton-Strump team, baddest lady in the land, and one of the baddest here on the call today, and a true advocate for students along their academic journey. So please make sure you get connected. And Betsy, thank you as always for the great information there relative to TMCF. So here's our runner program team. We've gone through a little bit about Wells Fargo and certainly spotlighted our strategic higher education partners there at TMCF. Got to shout you all out, students. We are knocking at the door of 300 registrants today, which is a very, very impressive number. We're a couple of days away from spring break. My son just got home from spring break, getting started. And so really impressed with our numbers there. Also want to shout out our top colleges and universities. As my numbers look right now, I think that CUNY New York and UNO are almost in an exact tie here for today. So congratulations to both of you all. We've also got Baruch College in our top 5 here for today. The band is on the field with UC Berkeley getting it done and joining out from the West Coast. And then my alma mater, the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, is also in our numbers here for today. So thank you all to those great colleges. From a partner perspective, we've got great representation on today from, of course, the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. We've got great support coming in also from the Hispanic Scholarship Fund today with big numbers. We've got Point Foundation in the mix. We've got some of our friends from SPEPD, which is the Society for Financial Education and Professional Development. So special thanks to those partners. We've got great folks on from UNCF. Unidos US is also very, very well represented here today. And special thanks also to the Wells Fargo colleagues. That's actually one of our top indicators today for Wells Fargo colleagues that we're serving as referrals in these different areas. And so good things in those kinds of areas. From a programming perspective, we're going to talk about the Resume 101. You're going to hear today what recruiters are looking for. We're going to share some do's. We're going to share some don'ts. You're going to leave today's meeting with understanding the power of action words. And then we're also going to take some of the resumes kind of before and after. And you have to give us the opinion of the ones that you think work the best. When we get to the end of the call, we're going to give you some reminders around how to access playback. Don't forget, you can log on to the TMCF YouTube channel and you can access playback for all of our prior sessions. We'll give you some additional details around some other resources that will be available for you. But do us a favor, get social with us today. Use that hashtag TMCF. Use the hashtag WFC Beyond College. Share this information with others that aren't able to join, or encourage them to come and join us here over our next almost 90 minutes to continue the discussions from here. Final reminder for me before we get to the real stars of the show. Sorry, Betsy, the real stars of the show. Use the Q&A feature. We've gotten a number of questions that have come in today. Our TMCF team is going to be addressing and bringing up those questions throughout the broadcast. We can continue to take items through the chat feature. Here's our rule, team. We will never call your name out in class. We're not going to ever state who the question came in from, but we do want to be able to have those questions. And I promise you, if a question is top of mind for you, there is someone else that's on with us today, or there's someone else that's listening to the playback that can benefit from the information. Be generous, ask your question, help to educate others. All right, runner program is done. Again, let's pivot over now. Let's take a look at two trusted partners joining us today. And you'll see on the next slide the information for our great partner, Derek Tinsley. He's joining us from the Atlanta market, the 404, the ATL, whatever you want to call it. Derek, we're excited to have you on the lines with us here for today. And then, of course, we also have Hope Hunter joining us from today. She is joining us, I think, from the Queen City of Charlotte, unless she's in the south of France. You know, she's got it like that, y'all. She stays on the road, so she'll have to disclose exactly where she's joining for today. But Derek, Hope, we're really excited to have you all on the lines here. I want to hand the reins over to you all for your opening comments. And then right after that, I know we're going to jump right into our content for today. So Derek, Hope, we're going to let you all take the reins from here. D, we'll give it to you at this time.
Alrighty. What an introduction. I don't even know how if I can follow that up with just introducing myself, but do appreciate the shout out. So looking forward to connecting with everyone. My name is Derek Tinsley. I'm on our National Partnerships and Programs team as a relationship lead. What our team does is we manage and execute the relationship for a variety of different national partners that have a focus on diverse membership. So think of partners such as National Society of Black Engineers, National Society of National Association of Black Accountants, National Association of Black MBA, those type of national partners where we manage and execute a relationship to help provide sourcing opportunities for our recruiters and visibility for our leaders to get involved for several programs to influence other relationship with those partners. So prior to joining Wells Fargo, I was a recruiter at the Home Depot. So I was a part of a lot of hiring decisions. I saw a lot of resumes. So I have a lot of insight and cool things to share with you all. So I'm looking forward to working with you all further and sharing some insight. And I'll pass it over to Hope.
Thanks, Derek. My name is Hope Hunter again. I am a North Carolina A&T State University grad, as well as a TMCF Leadership Institute grad as well. And so what I do is with talent acquisition, sourcing, and delivery is I work on the targeted sourcing team. And what we do is we pipeline and curate strategies and events and marketing efforts to pipeline diverse talent, like many of you all on this call today. So without further ado, we can get started. So understanding your resume. Your resume is a ticket to your interview, almost 30 to 60 seconds to make an impression about yourself. Most recruiters send a maximum time of 90 seconds reviewing your resume. This is your first impression and opportunity to let the recruiter or anyone know kind of what experience you have and if you're qualified for the position. Keywords are going to be really important when reviewing your resume, and relevant language. You'll definitely want to utilize keywords that you saw in the description, because oftentimes companies do use software to review the candidate pool. If a recruiter is reviewing your resume, they generally will spend, again, less than a minute or 90 seconds. So it is important that you have keywords and buzzwords that will pull them to read your resume longer. What do employers and recruiters look for? So most importantly, the format, what does it visually look like? You'll want all of your experience to be in chronological order, and it's probably best to keep your font very simple and formal to Times New Roman, Georgia, or Verdana. Your personal information is very important, including your permanent and school address, as you'll want them to have both. Your expected graduation date, especially as sometimes your classification cannot align with your expected graduation date. And this kind of gives an idea of what better internship or full-time offer that you might be better suited for. Make sure that you have both your email and your phone number on your resume so that there's a point of contact. If someone is interested in your resume, the last thing that you want is for them not to be able to contact you and move forward. When recruiters are looking at your experience, they're going to be looking for job hopping patterns, your career progression, internships, and work study. What's your story? How have you been able to use your prior experience to get to where you are today and what you're hoping to land, whether that's, again, an internship or a full-time offer? Leadership and activities, this is very important. This is an opportunity to show how well-rounded you are and what you're doing on top of any jobs or internships. Campus and volunteering activities, as well as diversity and enrichment activities as well. If you have any leadership or positions within those organizations or activities, this is a great time to highlight that as well, to show all the ways that you are a leader and all the ways that you're gaining experience. Awards and honors are very important as well to showcase any ways that you have been highlighted or recognized for any specific efforts that may be relevant to the internship or full-time offer that you're looking for. And so let's talk about dues. The page limit should always be no more than 1 page. Use action verbs to pull in the recruiter to read more about your resume. Have at least 2 people review your resume and provide feedback. Resumes can be very relative, so it's important that when you're getting feedback, you take what's consistent, but remember that it is your resume and your story, and no one knows it better than you do. Include the correct contact information, as well as, again, your email and your phone number, or even your LinkedIn. Use data to quantify accomplishments. This will really give an idea of what you've been able to accomplish, whether it be your internships or any prior experience. This is also really great because if you are to get the interview and they have star-based questions, again, they'll be able to reference how you were able to really make the difference in what you were trying to accomplish. Be truthful. You definitely don't want to lie on your resume and have to keep up that lie. The one things about lying my mom always told me was if you lie, you have to keep up with the lie. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where it starts off as a little white lie and it grows and it grows and it grows and you can't even remember the lie. Save your resume with the name format. As a recruiter, sometimes we're looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes back to back to back. And it's much easier if we can identify whose resume is who, especially in this virtual environment, if it's saved as your name. I always save my resume as h.hunter resume with the current year. And this just kind of gives a quick reference point without having too long of a word of a name for the document, while also specifying that this is in fact my resume. Save and upload as a PDF document. When you keep your resume in Word format and you send it over to the recruiter, you never know what can happen formatting wise, whether they're opening it up on their phone, their iPad, or their laptop. So the best way to make sure that your formatting stays exactly the way that you want it to, and that your resume is exactly the way that you created it, is to save it as a PDF before sending it or uploading it. So let's move on to some don'ts. Don't use lengthy paragraphs. Again, a recruiter is only going to spend up to 90 seconds reviewing your resume. So it's really important that you're able to be concise. Don't include irrelevant and fluff information. This is really important because, again, a recruiter is not going to spend a lot of time reviewing your resume. So what's important? What can you highlight? What is most important about your story? Don't get fancy with formatting. It's best to have your information there, concise, clear, and as much information that you feel is relevant. Formatting is always great if you can add it, but having something that is concise and easy to understand and easy to read through and review is always going to be your top priority. Don't use color, graphics, and pictures. This is kind of distracting towards your resume and will distract from some of your accomplishments and your experience. Don't include personal information such as hobbies, family status, or physical characteristics. Your resume just simply is not the platform for those kind of things. And don't use out of date or incorrect contact information. So that includes references or anything that, again, someone may have to verify. You'll definitely want to make sure that that's up to date. And don't copy and paste your resume into the application tool. This, again, can cause formatting issues and overall just is not professional. So now I will turn it over to Derek to talk about Word and why formatting matters.
All right. So thanks again, Hope. Hope, thanks for sharing some great information. And I'm going to speak to words and formatting, and I'm going to tie it all in together. And then towards the end, I may have to put a couple of you on the spot in the chat here to see to test some of the knowledge you've been learning after we tie it all in together. If you're following along. So let's do it. So words and formatting. I know on the screen you see action verbs, but I will be getting into that shortly. But for words and formatting, Hope and some others on the call did mention that, yes, the recruiter is going to spend no longer, or manager is going to spend no longer than probably 90 seconds or so before reviewing your resume. But I'm actually going to take it back a step and give you some studies that I prepared and that I saw and that I can testify to, is that a recruiter or an employer only spends an average of 6 to 7 seconds viewing your resume before they make a decision on whether you're a qualified fit for the job or not. So 6 or 7 seconds, they're going to either subconsciously make a decision if you're a fit to continue reading more, or they're going to subconsciously see some things that are going to turn them off and say, you know what, I can probably spend my time, viewing the rest of these resumes with someone else, because based on what I just gleaned through, as Hope mentioned, recruiters are looking at a variety of different resumes across a variety of different scopes, and they have a lot of internal things going on as well. So within the company, and a lot of requests, and hiring managers are busy as well. And the key is to fill the job. So if a recruiter is only spending 6 or 7 seconds of viewing your resume before they make a decision on whether to continue reading further or to move on to the next resume, best believe the first thing they're going to call out is the words and formatting of your resume. So if you don't take anything else away from this call, I want you to remember that Derek Tinsley told you that you have 6 or 7 seconds to make your impression on your resume, and that's exactly what your resume is, to make that impression. So that you can last that 7 seconds and have someone review your resume to learn a little bit more about your experience and your skills. So just keep that in mind when you're applying to jobs and you're building out your resume. So action verbs. These are going to be some key components in terms of how you can use action verbs to better quantify your experience, communicate your experience when it comes to communication styles and decision making. So I want you to take a look at some of the examples here, jot some of these down, take a picture, screenshot it, write them down, and use these as examples of how you can build out your resume as a compelling format. So action verbs are words that express an action. In a resume, action verbs are used to highlight your skills, experience, and accomplishments. They're specific and they clearly state your contributions, and they bring a confident tone to your resume. So these are the words that you're going to use to start off your resume with every bullet point when we start talking about building out your work experience. So you start off with an action verb. I'm actually going to give you an example of how to use an action verb. So as I believe majority of people on the call are students, so you're building out your professional career in a variety of different ways. So let's say you had an internship, right? And a part of your internship, as a part of one of the responsibilities you have for that internship, let's just say you were responsible for holding weekly client meetings to share client updates. Okay, sounds kind of bland, doesn't really give much value, but it was a part of your job and it's what you did. Now I'm going to show you an example of how you can use an action verb to influence that responsibility and take it to the next level, right? So we're gonna use the action verb. So we're taking the example of held client meetings to share client updates, to say spearheaded or led client meetings to communicate client updates, right? So that speaks a little bit more to your communication skills. You know, it references that, you know, you were the one speaking during these meetings. We mentioned that you were spearheading and leading these meetings. It shows that you were a leader in the room, how you organize resources, you organize the flow of the meeting. You know, it gives some assumptions that you did more than to just sit there, right? So it gives some assumptions to, you know, what you bring to the table, and this is what your resume is going to need, because like I said, you have 7 seconds to make that impression. So you're taking a pretty mundane example, and then you're taking it to the next level by saying you spearhead and communicated client updates, you know, et cetera, and you can build it from there. Now I'm going to give you an example of taking it to the next level. Okay, so you're taking that same example, held client meetings. Held client meetings to share client updates. You're going to take it to the next level by saying spearheaded client meetings to communicate client updates. Then you're going to take it to the next level by saying you spearheaded client meetings to communicate client updates, which led to, we're going to use some of those quantifiable examples that Hope mentioned, which led to a new process in which communication flowed throughout the organization. All right, you see what I did? I took a pretty mundane example and added some action verbs while using quantifiable results, which shows what your real impact was when you were in the room in these meetings, and also not only what your impact was, but also what it led to. So you pretty much influenced the way this company does business moving forward. You know, the process that they communicated, because they thought so highly of the work that you did, and they gleaned all this, or the recruiter or manager gleaned all this just directly from your resume. Because one thing to think of when you're applying to jobs, when you're building out your resume, is that chances are whoever's viewing your resume, they don't necessarily know you personally, unless, you know, it's a close and tight referral. So when you're throwing your resume in, you're throwing your resume in addition to hundreds of other peers and hundreds of other colleagues, sometimes thousands. So you have to do stuff to make yourself stand out. You know, a recruiter does not have time to contact every resume that they see. Even though you may be the best student in the world, you may lead all these cool projects, you may do all these cool things, but if your resume doesn't reflect that, you got that 6 to 7 seconds for that recruiter has 6 to 7 seconds to make that decision on whether they want to read more or they want to move on to the next. So just keep that in mind. And these are just examples of how you can, you know, influence a decision of a recruiter or a manager by taking that resume to the next step, by using action verbs and using quantifiable results, such as what Hope shared earlier. So we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so these are some action verbs, just similar to what I mentioned earlier. So these are just a pretty thorough example of different action verbs that you can use on your resume to help build it out. So, you know, I won't bore you by reading every individual action verb, but I do want you to pay attention to what you see shaded there in gray. So as a part of your resume, you know, the resume is the best of you. Okay, just think of your resume as the best of you. Your resume does not, when I'm speaking of you from an experience standpoint, your resume should not be just a reflection of the job responsibilities or the job description you were hired into or what you did. The resume is showcasing, you know, the impact and decisions and what you did while you were with that organization or while you were working that project. So these are what you see in the gray here are topics of what I would like for everyone to think of when they're building out their resume, and just use these as examples to help with those bullet points when you start describing your work experience. So anything from leading a project, saving the company time or money or resources. If you changed or improved something, that goes back to the example that I shared earlier. That's a really quantifiable impact when someone can think that highly of you to change the way a company operates or change the way the team moves forward, just based on, you know, your observations, your decision making. And that's just one example. You can influence that in a variety of different ways. Did you manage a team? Did you manage resources? Did you achieve something? Did you write something? Did you partner with cross-functionally with other business units? These are the things and examples of what you should share when you are building out your experience. And these are examples of action verbs to help communicate that in an intelligent and professional way. So we can go to the next slide. Job description. So these are this is one of my favorite sections because this is the key here. I'm going to take you behind the scenes a little bit later. So here's 6 questions I'd like for you to ask yourself before you start applying to jobs and when you're building out your resume. So what are the requirements for this role? Then ask yourself, do I meet the requirements for this role? Ask yourself, what are the years of experience required for this position? And then ask yourself, does your resume reflect the years of experience that you have, or is it unclear and kind of vague for a person to read? Because like I said, you have 7 seconds, and a recruiter, believe me, they have a lot of resumes to get through. So they're only going to spend a certain amount of time. They're not going to do the work for you. They're going to want it. They want it clear as day as they can on the resume, as it shows on the resume. And then finally, ask yourself, what are the desired qualifications? And then say, does your resume highlight the qualifications that'll help you distinguish yourself out from that large pool? And I'll get back to that in a second here. So before we move forward, I want to take you behind the scenes a little bit and share the back end process of what you see when you see a job posted online. I'm gonna show you how the bacon's made. All right. So a lot of times when a role gets posted online, when you see a job on Indeed, a hiring manager or a recruiter, they had a conversation at some point to call out the job responsibilities and get it to where you see it posted online. So a lot of times companies use, job codes, which are generic codes, which generate job descriptions, which are pretty generic in nature, because it's hard to update every single job description every time you want to upload one. But a lot of times companies use certain components of that job description to make that job reflect to what the 2022 version of that job is. So I want you to pay attention to these sections. The job title, obviously, that's going to be the section which is going to pretty much distinguish, the level of this job and make sure that your experience and your education aligns with this job. So, I know it's tempting, but don't apply to the first CEO job you got just as soon as you got your bachelor's degree. Let's take it a step back further and just make sure the job levels that you're applying to kind of coincide with what your peers move into as they progress in their careers. So job title is one, and then below the job title, you usually see something called the position purpose, position description, or something to that capacity. But that piece of that job, sometimes a company is going to use that section to show you what this team does, what this role does, and it's their opportunity to market to you, the job seeker. This is what's cool about this job. This is what this person is going to be doing, and the technology they're going to be working with, and this is why you should apply to this job. All right, because they want you just as much as you want them in some cases. So pay attention to that and make sure your resume, correlates to what they're describing in the job response. I'm sorry, the position purpose and or the position description there. So just make sure your resume clearly states how there's correlation between the two, between yourself and that job qualifications at the top. Then towards the bottom of the resume, you're going to see something called the desired qualifications, or something or preferred qualifications, and you'll definitely see required qualifications. So these are going to be this is the money shot for you. All right. So if you don't take anything, this is the second thing I want you to take from this, is that when you see something in the preferred qualifications or desired qualifications, chances are a recruiter or a manager, sat down at some point and they spelled out, okay, I know the position says this is what the minimum qualifications are. Yes, a person has to have these minimum qualifications, but I really want this person to have this. And then they're going to build it out in the position, the preferred qualifications or the desired qualifications. So if you see something called out in those sections, best believe your resume needs to clearly reflect the experience that you have that either replicates what you see in that preferred section, or it can easily translate to that. Because like I said, you have 7 seconds or less to make that impression on that recruiter or that manager before they make a decision on whether or not they're going to continue reading your resume, or if they're going to move on to the next section. So please take a look at that and realize that every time you apply to a job. And a lot of you may have heard this in the past, that A resume is a living, breathing document, right? Your resume is going to go through several makeovers, as you apply to different roles. And I know you all are probably saying, especially the students on the call, whether you're applying to internships right now, you're applying to your first role out of college. I know you're saying, Derek, I'm applying to 10 jobs a day. I don't have time to update my resume every 10 times I'm applying to a job. I know it can seem a little arduous at the moment, but I'm telling you, if you put a little bit of effort and a little bit of discipline behind this and make some minor tweaks as you apply to different roles, it's going to bear fruit in the end. And honestly, it's not even that big of a task, because if you're applying to the right level of jobs, at the right time that match your level of experience and match your education background and match your level of interest, you're only making minor tweaks because, just based on whatever that company is looking for. So it's not even that hard. But, if you're applying to, an accountant job, and then you're applying to a software engineer job and you're a history major, that's a bigger conversation we may need to have, because those necessarily don't correlate with one another. So you may have to email Dewey to get some help on that piece if you're doing that. But if you're applying to jobs in the same skill set with the same tone, you're just making minor tweaks. So please just take a little bit of time and effort, and it's going to bear fruit at the end. Trust me. And you can go to the next slide. Okay, so y'all are making us work hard here. I'm going to fill it up to you all. So I know Hope shared some great information. I shared some great information. So at this point, everybody on the call is almost a pro. So on the screen here, you see two examples. You see a before example and you see an after example. I'm going to take you through the good and the bad, but I want to get you all's thoughts. If you can just blow up the chat here, based on your experience, based on what Hope and I have shared already, can you call out some differences between the before resume versus what you see on the after resume? Just tell me what you see, tell me what looks good, tell me what looks bad. Just blow up the chat. Any and all is welcome. I want to see what you all are learning, because since I can't see you personally, I'm sure everyone was capturing notes here. See the format. Concise, yeah. Okay, all right, so let me find out everybody's listening. Okay, good. Anyone else? What else you see? Deleted keywords, okay. The use of spacing, okay, great, that's a good one. Okay, cool. Hey, y'all may have copies of my notes here, because you're kind of reading directly from what I'm getting ready to say. So before we go further, let me just get into it before you all start stealing the rest of my thunder. So let's start with the left. Let's break it down from top to bottom here. So Katie Wells. So Katie Wells, she looks like she took up 4+ lines just to call out the resume. I'm sorry, her contact information, address, and phone number. Education, we see at the left here, it's kind of misformatted. It's not really shaped well. Doesn't really call out what the major is. Not formatted well at all. And I can see the difference between the two states, between the two universities. So that's already a turnoff. So I can tell you, if a recruiter was looking at that, it's at the top. That's probably one of the first things that they see, and they would take that 7 seconds or less tone, and honestly may not even read the rest of that resume, just based on some of the small lack of attention to detail that they see there at the top of the resume. Another thing I like to call out, especially for those looking for entry-level roles and still building out their level of experience. When you see a section that says skills and software and proficiencies, in my personal opinion, and this is pretty much a common opinion, it does no good just to have a blanket bullet point of your skills, software, and experience. Because it's easy to say that you have experience in Microsoft Office or JavaScript or whatever the technology is, but what will do you better in the long run is to build that into quantifiable experience based on your work experience. Because anyone can say they have Microsoft Office experience, but a manager or a recruiter would more likely want to see how you've used that experience and what that led to within that organization. So the one on the left is not really giving what it needs to give. There's a lot of things off. So as we can see, not necessarily the best. So that Katie's first resume probably wouldn't make it past that 7 seconds. So Katie listened to this presentation. She jotted down some notes. She reached out to Dewey. She reached out to me. She reached out to Hope, and she got some game. And she went to the next step. So as you can see on the second slide, on the right of your screen, I believe, Katie, she has a much cleaner resume at the top. So you can see the education is listed there at the top. You know, she has the expected graduation date. You see what her major is. You know, everything is aligned perfectly. You know, everything is bolded where it needs to be bolded. You know, everything looks really well here. Same goes for the experience. On the resume on the left, I believe she left off the marketing experience. I'm sorry, the marketing internship that she had, which honestly is the most important thing on this resume when it comes to work experience. Because, you know, if you're looking for your first job out of school or your next internship, you're getting moved to the top of the list if someone sees that you've already had a relevant intern or your internship could correlate to the needs of this person's role. So, you know, we're looking at the contact information, education's on point, the internship experience is on point. You know, she still calls out quantifiable results. She was listening to my last couple of slides earlier. I see action verbs all in there. I see percentage signs. I'm looking at that to see quantifiable results. So Katie really took some effort into build out the right side of that resume and shows realistic examples of you know, the work that she done at her internship or at her other roles and the impact that she had. So the right resume is what I would love for you all to take home to make sure that you're building out a similar style resume. It just looks a lot cleaner. It's very visually appealing, and it doesn't have, you know, the recruiter or the manager, you know, squinting their eyes to try to, you know, find key things. You know, it's spelled out in front of them, which is great. I get this question all the time, sometimes about you know, some of the placing of some of these key points. As a upcoming graduate or recent graduate, it is probably key for you to have education at the top of your resume, because a lot of time that's a prerequisite for whether it be an internship or your first right out of school. So those are going to be key things that a manager or a recruiter is going to be looking for. So keep that at the top. You know, and then go right into the experience, with the most relevant experience or most recent experience being first, and then going down in reverse or going from chronological order from there. If you're talking about current experience, like for a job you're currently in, make sure you're using present tense. If you're talking about a job that you're no longer in, make sure you're using past tense. As a recent grad or an upcoming grad, I know it's tough to fill out a whole page when, you know, you haven't had a job yet. Your full-time job is to be a student, or you may have had an internship. So I want you all to just realize that, you know, your work experience while you're in school is going to consist of a lot of things. So it's not only going to consist of your, you know, core traditional work experience. It's going to include class projects. It's going to include extracurricular activities, volunteer work that you did, charitable work that you did. If you did sports, were you a leader of this club or that club within your time at school? Those are things that make a well-rounded student coming out of school, and it shows that you were diversified while you were on campus, and that you had your attention in a lot of different ways outside of just, you know, going to school and graduating. You were also participating in flexing your muscle in a variety of different ways. So all of this is just going to make a perfect resume to get you past that 7 seconds, more to that 90-second point, so that a recruiter is taking a little bit more time to view your resume and then make a decision on if you're a great fit for the job based on your actual skills. So great information here from Katie. I'm glad she listened. We'll go to the next slide now. Okay, I think we're good on time. So same goes for Taylor's resume. If we can blow up the chat here, and if someone can call out some of the key differences between the before on the left versus the version on the right. What are some of the things that stick out to you that Taylor didn't necessarily do well on the first one? Fonts. Personal email. Maybe, okay. Order of achievements. Back verbs, okay. Okay, professional summary. That's a good example. I like the font, professional summary, the use of verbs. Who else? What else we got? What else we got? Hyperlink on the right resume. Okay. Overall organization. I would agree to that. Come on, let me dates. Yep. Dates. Okay, good. So you all, I don't know, maybe my email got hacked and you all saw my presentation. So like I said, I'm going to keep moving forward. Bold words and location of the company. Okay, great. So At the top of the resume on the left, you'll see Taylor use red font, right? For whatever reason, Taylor decided to use red font. I would definitely shy away from that, especially if you have 20 plus years of experience and you're at a professional status. Red font really isn't necessary. And then right below that, Taylor has their resume, I'm sorry, their Facebook, for whatever reason, listed under their name, which is a big no-no. And I would highly encourage you not to link any sort of personal social media to your account unless you're linking like a professional LinkedIn, or you're in the creative space and you have a portfolio of your work, or like a personal website that shows relevant examples of the job. Yeah, all of that as well. So you can definitely link that to your resume. But your Facebook or your Instagram or your TikTok or your Twitter, I don't think, I probably would see something I don't want to see there. So please stay away from that. Of course, the contact information is below the name, which was kind of formatted a little bit weird below the name. So that's a turn off as well. And then I'll talk a little bit about the summary that Taylor has there as well. And I'll skip that and go back to that and go to the work experience here. So I'm sorry, the work history here. So Taylor is using abbreviations. I'm not sure if someone called that out in the chat here, but that's a no-no, not to use abbreviations. You never want to assume that whoever's reading your resume understands what those abbreviations are, because like I said, a lot of times when someone is viewing your resume, they do not know the context of you. They don't know all the cool things and great things you've done in the past. They only have to go off of your resume, and they're only taking, like I said, 6 to 7 seconds to make that decision. So don't make them work hard. Another big thing that I've always noticed is that even though Taylor has been at the same company for 20 plus years, he or she does not have the list of time they spent in each role within the company. So you always want to make sure you're calling that out, even if you've had multiple roles within the company. Going back up to the statement at the very top, this is an interesting game to play. I mean, this is their version of a professional summary, I'm assuming, even though Taylor doesn't have it called out on the resume, which is also a red flag. You always want to be a little bit more succinct and specialize what you're putting at these topics versus going into so much detail about that given job you're applying to, because it is easy to oversee a company name or a company title, and you may be applying for a project manager on your resume, but on the job you're actually applying to, it's a marketing specialist. And then the recruiter is looking at Taylor funny because Taylor did not apply to the right job, and they're gonna go on to the next resume. So rather than just putting a blanket statement about your previous history, look at the example on the right, and then we'll go over to Taylor's good resume after she listened to my spiel here, and she listened to me and Hope. Taylor called out some bullet points on the professional summary that hit a lot closer to home. So goes through years of experience. I see percentages based on previous results. I'm seeing the relevant experience in terms of communication. I'm seeing highlights and a good summary that will entice a recruiter or a manager to continue reading more to get to that 90+ second mark, so that they can view a little bit more holistically the experience that Taylor had. I think I saw in the chat that someone said something about certifications or something to that matter on the resume. If you look at the very bottom of the bad resume that Taylor put, I won't call it bad, but the before resume that Taylor put, Taylor has their PMP certification, and it looks like they're applying to a project manager job. A project manager job, commonly, you have to have your PMP certification, but Taylor is making the recruiter look all the way to the bottom to find that. Versus on the right, after she listened to me, she put PMP right next to her name, and it's easy for the recruiter to see that Taylor has that project management certification, and then a recruiter or manager will read the rest of that resume pretty thoroughly and notice all the other great bullet points that Taylor has listed when it comes to quantifiable results, action verbs, and accomplishments. So like I said earlier, the resume is going to be the best version of you. This is your key for a recruiter to be wowed by your resume based on what they see on paper, and this is going to make that decision a lot easier for the recruiter to view your resume in a succinct view, and then move it on to the next step in the process, and hopefully you will land the job from there. And that was it for that. You can go to the final slide. All right. So I had a great time talking to everyone today. I'm hoping everyone paid attention to Hope and I. But if you did, you have some great notes. You got some work to do. But after you do that and listen to this replay over and over, you're ready to search for your job. So I'll pass it over to Dewey.
Hey, Derek, thanks a lot for, I think, what was a ton of information. And we're going to bring Mozika on in just a moment to facilitate the Q&A with things. But there's a couple of things that jumped out for me, Doc. The no color. I need you to go a little bit deeper on this one. Why is that a bad thing, especially for someone that's maybe in a creative industry? Maybe you're an art major. Maybe you're someone that focuses on social media. How do you spotlight your creative flavor without using color on that one-page resume? Because I think I heard you say that one-page resume for young talent. Talk about it, sir.
Correct. Yeah, one page. Yeah, one page for sure. Especially as you're starting off. You know, if it goes to 2 pages after you get a little more experience, you know, I won't be mad. But 1 page as an upcoming grad is going to be max. What I would appreciate. So to the color portion, you know, honestly, you want to shy away from things that are unnecessary. You know, I just find it unnecessary and somewhat, you know, from a minor standpoint, a little unprofessional to have you know different colored fonts on your resume, but when you're taking the attention off of that recruiter or that manager based on what they really want, what you really want them to see, which is your experience and your qualifications as it relates to the job. So you want to stay away from unnecessary, you know, content on your resume. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're applying to creative roles, and you know you do have to showcase your ability to be creative, I think there are far better ways to show that. Within whether it be from your work experience, whether it be linking to more of a professional, you know, website or social media that, you know, that shows your examples of creativity. That's where you can direct your talent, but not to a pink letter font, to a red letter font. You know, it's just a turn off. You know, so you want your content to be focused on the right things.
Yeah, and I love what Hope, and Derek, thanks for that. I love what Hope said too. She said no distractions. Keep it simple. You don't want to have things that are detractors for you in any way. And I'm assuming these are also pieces you could cover maybe in an interview, which we'll talk about later this month, or in your CV. We're not going to talk too much about CVs today, but hey, if you need to expound on, hey, your portfolio or the work that you've done around web design or other kinds of areas, it sounds like there's other spaces. Again, not on that 1-page resume, 1 page. All right. Mozika, I want to go ahead and bring you on. And scholars, just some quick reminders. We had a question that came in around the recording sessions for today. So again, as a reminder, we are recording today's content, and you will have access to that via TMCF's YouTube channel. We dropped that into the chat. Bookmark that page, share it with anyone and everyone. Let's see if we can get trending out there with the playbacks on things. So Mozika, I know we've had a lot of questions that have come in. We're still taking those live through the Q&A. But we want to give you the reins here. We've got plenty of time on the clock. Let's start unpacking some of these questions, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dewey. And Derek and Hope, you did an excellent job. This was a meaty conversation. It truly was an insider's view on resume writing. And I just have to point out a few things that I took notes on that that are salient points that I think it's worth mentioning again. Is ensure that your resume correlates clearly to the job qualifications. I think that's super important, as well as be truthful, and then include data to quantify your accomplishments. I wrote those down. I think they're really important. And I thank you, Derek and Hope, for sharing those. So now let's go to some of the questions that we received. So one of the questions we received from our participants today was, what if you match only 75% of the desired qualifications? How do I address the 25%, which is unmatched?
I can take a shot at that one since I harped on that one a little bit. So yeah, so like I said, in those desired qualifications, those are some of the things that a hiring manager or recruiter will refer to as like nice to have. Like I mentioned, the minimum qualifications are what a person has to have in order to be a qualified candidate for this role. But the preferred qualifications are more deemed as nice to have. So it is not a red flag by all means. If you're applying to a job and you don't meet every single bullet point that they have listed there, I still encourage you to apply to a job as long as you have relevant experience which correlates to the things you see in those other sections of the job description, whether it be the position purpose. If they're describing a position that you've played a similar role in, you know, it all kind of folds in together. So just because you don't have every bullet point under the preferred qualifications, a recruiter or a manager can make assumptions that, okay, this person was in a relevant role before applying to this job and looks like they have some relevant experience in other ways. They may be able to learn some of those things that they don't have under the preferred qualifications just because they have so much other things. So I would never tell anyone not to apply to any job. That's not what I'm saying, but I just feel it's the best use of your time to apply to jobs that look more realistic. But don't shy away from roles. If you feel you don't have every single bullet point there, I still encourage you to apply, because there are other ways you can incorporate your experience to translate over into those other bullet points, and you can show aptitude that you are able to learn and able to grow into that those other bullet points as you get in the company.
Thank you, Derek. Another question that we had in the chat today was, is a professional summary the same as the summary of qualifications?
That's a great question. I can take this one. So the professional summary, honestly, just a quick cheat code. If you keep up with your LinkedIn will write you an excellent professional summary. And that professional summary is just going to be a 1 or 2 sentence about who you are and what you're looking for. And again, LinkedIn will do it for you if your LinkedIn is all up to date.
Thank you, Hope. Our next question, what advice would you give for anyone that has trouble picking the aspects of the resume that might not be as important, are too long, or need to be cut down?
I'm sorry, Mozika, could you repeat that?
Sure. What advice would you give for anyone that has trouble picking the aspects of their resume that might not be as important, are too long, or need to be cut down?
Okay, I'll take a shot at this. So I think going back to the job description, you can call out what's relevant in your resume if you're thoroughly reading the job description before applying. I don't think I harped on it as much, but one other key thing I want you to call out before you're applying to jobs are going to be the job description and actually reading the classifications of that job description and understanding what the job actually is. Because if you're understanding what the job is, and then you've understood what the work that you've done in the past, whether it be from a school standpoint or from a work experience standpoint, you can call out what's relevant there, and you can highlight those particular accomplishments or projects or focuses on your resume. Now, your resume is just the best of you. It's not your biography. There's things you can speak to in the interview once you get to that point. So you want to have a succinct, clear view of what your experience is, how it correlates to what that job description reads, what those preferred and minimum qualifications read. If your experience is clearly identifying the correlation between the two or identification between the two, your resume is going to get some eyes on it. So that's going to take you to the next step. And then once you get into the next step, that's when you start expounding in a little bit more detail on some of the other things that make you your whole self.
So we have some questions in the chat now. And one of them is, I have a lot of experience and they are all important. My resume ends up being more than a page. How can I fix that? Please and thank you.
Is that me or are you, Hope?
I can take it. Yeah. So a general rule of thumb that I like to follow personally is for any previous job experience, keep it to 3 bullets, keep it concise. But as a recruiter, I am always looking for what is currently most important. What are you currently doing, and how is that going to help you be successful in the job that you're looking for or applying to? So a general rule of thumb, keeping previous experience down to 3 bullets, and also, again, customizing your resume for every different job posting. I know it may seem tedious, but the effort on the front end really, really does make the difference in terms of going through the software systems. First, first and foremost, but also just tailoring it specifically for that position, especially when you have a lot of experience. Sometimes it can tend to get overwhelming as well. So what exactly a part of all of your experience is most important to this job description, and keeping it relevant to that. And honestly, just saving that each and every different resume as a part of your own files, and that way you can pull those that are similar in job postings and those ones that are maybe different. But again, tailoring your resume definitely pays off in the long haul.
Yep, and just one thing to add to that, another thing that you'll notice in a job description, a lot of times they have the years of required experience for that job description. So if you do have multiple years of experience and a role requires 7 years of experience, keep your resume at 7, 8, 9 years of experience. So that's a good guide to show you kind of what's important and what to include on your resume, even if it is over 2 pages. As you become a professional and you gain more experience, like I said, it's not necessarily a red flag if you have over 1 page. If you have 15 years of relevant experience, it's not the worst thing in the world, but just make sure it's all relevant. Whatever's on the page, just make sure it's relevant.
The next question is, would the cover letter just be the resume in writing? And I think when they say in writing, they're referring to like in narrative form. And I think that's a great question.
Will the cover, say that again, will the cover letter be a resume in writing?
Yes, like basically, could you distinguish between what should be in a cover letter versus what should be in a resume?
Yeah. So cover letters will be a little bit more lengthier than a resume, because it is that's more of the somewhat of a professional bio of yourself. It shows what experience you have, why you would be a good fit for that company, and how your previous experience, whether it be from school or work, would correlate into the actual role. And it allows you to express, be a little bit more authentic and express your true interests into the position. Depending on which recruiters you're talking to, some of them may not prefer to look through resumes. Personally, if the job doesn't necessarily call for a cover letter, I would rather you spend more time building out your experience on the resume from an experience standpoint. That's what's going to stick out a little bit further, because like I said, recruiters are only looking at the resume for, like I said, a max 90 seconds. So it's tough to read a long, lengthy cover letter, then go to the person's recruiter, go to their relevant experience. So it's just a more thorough version of yourself, and it allows you to express a little bit more interest in the cover letter.
One of our participants said that you mentioned the resume should be sent out as a PDF, and they agree, but they've had recruiters ask them to send their resume in a Word doc. And this person is always concerned about the formatting issue. So they would like to know, what options do they have?
I guess I'll chime in. So if they're asking for a Word doc, I guess you have no choice. I would just, in terms of formatting, there's ways you can lock that Word document so that you can prevent someone from editing, and so that the formats kind of stays true to what you're sending. If someone is asking for the Word doc, I would refrain from copy and pasting. Just make sure everything is still aligned before you send it, and just make sure you're verifying what you send. But always, PDF is always preferred in my eyes. Just looks a little bit cleaner. So I would ask you to have both. But if someone requires it, kind of is what it is. You have to do what the requirement says. But if you are able to save it in a PDF, I'm sorry, if you have to save it in a Word doc, just make sure it's clean and make sure it's locked for editing, I'd say.
Okay, our next question. In light of the fact that you want everyone to keep their resume to a 1-page, this question is, how far back should job history go? Should you include details on every job you've had, or can you get rid of possible redundancies?
Yeah, I can take this one. So again, just honing down on that tailoring your resume. Keep that resume information relevant. So if you are applying for an internship, with Wells Fargo, an audit and risk, they probably don't need to know that you're a camp counselor your sophomore year in high school. That is something you can definitely leave off. And so I know that especially in college, it can be kind of tricky about your high school experience and when you can kind of trickle that off. I always think after your sophomore year, it's best to kind of leave everything from high school off specifically. And just again, anything that's not relevant that you can't speak to in an interview or in an elevator pitch doesn't need to go on that resume for that particular job posting. Again, perhaps maybe if you were applying for, not an internship or a professional opportunity, but perhaps just, kind of a regular job on campus or something, then it might be appropriate to have maybe a little bit more of the incohesive experience. But you want your resume to always tell a story. So if it doesn't match in the story, you probably don't need it on that particular resume.
So we have a question from someone on the opposite end of the spectrum. They said, I have no work experience. Is it necessary for me to have a resume?
Mm,
I have no work experience, but it's necessary for me to have a resume. Okay.
interesting.
Y'all are making me work today. I see. All right.
A good one.
So if you have no experience, and do I need to have a resume? My answer would be yes. You have to have, you have to have something in order to apply for a job. I think there's a bigger conversation to have if you don't have the experience or have no experience and you're looking for certain roles. I think that's where a key point of networking and meeting people are going to have to factor into your equation. And I think there's content that's going to come out a little bit later in the workshop series. It's going to discuss some of those key points or give some insight into it at least. So I would say with that in mind, go back to what I said earlier. Just because you don't have work experience doesn't necessarily mean you're not a fit for a job, or that your experience, or you can't learn the required experience. Because like I said, you do have the ability to include things such as sports you may have played, organizations you may have been a part of, class projects that you may have accomplished, courses you've taken, computer skills that you have, recent examples of technology. There's ways to incorporate things that just because you're not getting paid for them in a traditional sense, there's ways to incorporate the things you've done, whether it be through leisure or through charitable work or through extracurricular activities. There's ways to build that into your experience. So that technically is considered your work experience when you are applying to a job. So you do have some examples of what you can use to show relevant examples of how that experience can translate into being successful at that role. So you want to just make sure you're having an honest conversation with yourself, make sure you're applying to the right level of jobs, but also make sure you're able to pull relevant examples of things you've done in the past through other sources, and just speak to how it can correlate to that role. And honestly, that's actually a good example of maybe when a cover letter could come into play, because a cover letter can actually address some of those things that your resume be lacking as well. So that's why I would never say never against cover letters. That can be a way to maybe fill in some of those gaps based on your level of experience. So just consider that when you are starting to apply and get out there to look for jobs.
Now let's just shift gears just a little bit to talk about the difference between a CV and a resume. Could you distinguish that for our audience?
And team, this is Dewey. The cover letter has been a hot theme here today.
Yeah,
I love Mosika's question. So what are the differences there? But how often is it required? I mean, every time you submit an application, you have to submit a CV or a cover letter. Is that going to be a requirement? Break that down for us, team. It's been an interesting theme around this one, Mosika.
Yeah, I know. Making me work. So going back, I mean, so make sure you know what you're applying to, make sure you're showing relevant examples. So personally, the resume tells me the majority of things I would need to know about you when you're applying to that job. I would say if the job portal doesn't necessarily require you to upload it, the resume is going to be the key in my eyes, at least, to view that experience. So I would prefer someone put the time and effort into the resume and or cover letter or summary to speak to some of those things, because like I said, time is limited when managers and recruiters are viewing your information. So there's there's not an endless, window of time that they have to review all these candidates. So you want to make it succinct, you want to make it all relevant and speak to what the requirements actually call for. So short answer is, give what they're asking for, and build out your experience to show examples of how you're a fit for this job. My opinion.
And there may be some system limitations too. For certain applications, you may be able to submit one thing. And if it's, in my opinion, if it's between a cover letter and a resume, I would encourage you strongly to submit the resume.
Exactly. That's your ticket,
Yeah, I think that piece is there. I will tell you, there's some other things, and you all have touched on some of these pieces already. Hey, if you're doing work from a community perspective, maybe you are the primary person that was taking care of other family members in a babysitting capacity, or if you're in the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts, or whatever, offices, clubs, anything you served on, all of those things are fair game to kind of plug into your to your CV, or into that one-page resume. So a lot of interesting discussion around those today. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So
we have a question from one of our audience members that says, I'm a 2020 grad. How long should I leave my college accomplishments and accolades on my post-college resume? That's a really insightful question, in my opinion.
Post-college.
Yeah.
I got opinions, but you want me to take? Okay, I got you. All right. Yeah. So if you're a 2020 grad and it's 2022, so it's not that long ago. So my opinion is, if it's relevant, I would still suggest keeping it on your resume, because if you have north of 2 years of experience, the peers and roles that you should be applying for, which kind of fit that level of experience, you may have to go back into some of the work you did, from a minor standpoint. Obviously most important is going to be your professional experience, to give solid examples of what you did post-college. However, it does not hurt you in any way, and it helps you kind of diversify your responses if you are going back to some of the collegiate things you've done. However, I would prioritize all the work you've done post-college, but that still gives you a holistic view of yourself, once you're 2 years into your professional career. And then the more and more you grow throughout your career, and the more jobs you get, slowly but surely the college stuff is going to fall off. I would say the further you get away from college, yes, you would start removing maybe some of the clubs you were a part of while you were in school, maybe some of the extracurricular things. If you had an internship in college, I think that's more than worthy of being on your resume, especially if you only have 2 years of professional experience, because that even equals your, honestly, that even boosts your level of professional experience, because an internship is technically considered professional experience. So just use that. Just make sure you're asking yourself, is this really relevant to the role? Is this relevant to the job? And then I don't think there's any problem with leaving it on there. But the more throughout your career you're going to go, it will eventually fall off. But 2 years in, I would say keep the important stuff.
All right. Is it ever acceptable to list your work experience in non-chronological order if older work experiences are more applicable to the job than your current or more recent experiences, such as maybe dividing the work experience as business work experience versus other work experience?
So I guess I got to take this one. Take the last one. These are good questions. But personally, and again, I think I mentioned this earlier, resumes have a very general format, but also a lot of opinions about resumes are really relative. So ultimately, you have to feel best about your resume and your story. Personally, I believe that chronological order does keep it organized and easiest to flow. However, if you do have the opportunity to perhaps meet with that recruiter or identify in your professional summary that you have a lot of experience that doesn't align with your current role, I think that that's really important to highlight. And I think that there are other ways to highlight, perhaps making that bullet larger or emphasizing, again, through your elevator pitch that you do have previous experience. But ultimately, I do believe that chronological order kind of best tells your story while someone is reviewing it at a first glance. And again, overall, we're only looking at the resume for only 60 seconds. So, I mean, we will review the whole thing if that makes sense. Derek, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so these are examples where you may have to get a little creative if you have the relevant experience. But let's say you made a career shift, somewhere in your career, and you wanted to still highlight the experience that you had, even though it may be a little bit further down in your resume. You still want to keep the resume in a succinct order, in terms of chronologically. However, this is another example when either a cover letter or a summary of, or either an objective or a summary of qualifications can come into play, where you can kind of tell that story of why you're applying to this job, even though I had X amount of work experience, X amount of years ago, based on the professional development your career path took, or for personal development yourself took, you can amplify, this is the experience that I do have in a succinct manner, and you can speak to that a little bit more towards at the either on the cover letter or at the summary of objectives or professional objective, where it is at the top of your resume, where a recruiter is a little more inclined to give you benefit of the doubt and read a little bit further into it and make a decision from there. So it's just because it's older in your work experience history, it's still ways to incorporate it towards the top. You just got to be a little bit more creative there.
Dewey, would you like to interject here?
Yeah, Mozika, thanks for this. Derek, we've heard you mention this several times, 7 seconds to make a decision, 60 seconds, 90 seconds if you're compelled. What gets you from that 90-second to the next phase on your resume? And then Derek, what gets you thrown out immediately? I mean, the minute you say, and I know Ruth's opinion on this, one typo, you're starting to get to the outbox. But what gets you past 90 seconds? And then, like my dad used to say, you couldn't come to my dad's house with a hat on. If you came in, you had to get out. What gets you out?
So I could definitely speak to what gets you out, but hope you want to, I guess, we'll get you in.
Real talk.
Yeah,
real talk.
I'll kick us off. So what keeps me pushing towards 90 seconds versus 60? I think those action verbs are definitely what pulls me in, especially when those action verbs are really strong. So instead of saying like, managed, or using words like managed or facilitated, or and then when I go to read that full bullet, I can see how it was quantified. So by saving the company X amount during the time of my internship, or I was able to train 10 different people throughout the course of 6 months, and then I can say, okay, wow, let me read a little bit more, because from start to finish, they were able to really articulate themselves. So that's what pulls me in from 90 seconds to 60 seconds. I think what gets me pulled out a little bit quicker, right? So maybe 30 seconds and not 60 seconds. Is I think when it's visually very disorganized. So if it just does not look very formal, very professional, it's almost kind of disappointing, where you're like, well, where do I even look? Because you're just like kind of focused and again, like distracted on, the inconsistent format or font, or, those nitpicky things that you just know are kind of a no-no when it comes to resumes that are still there. And that lack of effort is almost kind of disappointing, where that kind of makes me more inclined to kind of move on to the next resume.
Yep. And just to close it out in terms of what will maybe have a manager or recruiter a little less likely to continue to read further, is if you're making it hard for a person to grab those nuggets of experience that you have, you're making them have to read multiple lines in order to view that. Like I said, managers, recruiters are looking at a ton of resumes. So your job is to make their job as easy as possible by clearly stating, what makes you a fit for this role, and show quantifiable examples of things you've done in the past whether it be from a work standpoint or work that you do in school, how it correlates to what that job is requiring. So, if you're following, the steps that Hope outlined to get the interest there, if you're showing, if I see, a lot of technologies listed in the resume, I see dollar signs, I see percentage signs, I'm seeing a lot of things that are appealing to the eye that are going to make me want to, dig a little bit deeper and read a little bit closer, versus if I see things that are misformatted at the top, I don't, the margins are off, it can speak to a potential lack of communication skills or ability or attention to detail. And, a lot of recruiters are not going to spend time viewing a resume that they feel wouldn't be a good reflection of the person if they went to the next steps, et cetera, et cetera. So just make sure the margins, make sure everything is formatted correctly, words matter, and make sure you're applying to relevant jobs, and you'll be good to go.
So formatting, yes. Had in my dad's house, no. Big things on that side. I also love, Dirk, what you said around the numbers. And I've heard of other partners, and Mosika, we'll take maybe one or two more from your side and then jump. I've also heard of some recruiters that will literally go through with the pen and will circle all of the metrics. You're in the banking industry. You're talking about finance and for roles within our world. We're going to look at the numbers in given areas, and those numbers, again, whether it's the clients that you serve, customer service perspective, or the number of accounts that you've managed. I think those numbers are important. Would you all agree we need to find some ways to quantify what folks are doing too?
Yep, you hit the nail on the head. That's the important thing. And just going back to some of the things I kept expressing earlier about how quick, someone can easily make a decision on your resume. Recruiters look at tons of resumes, and especially when they're looking to fill, the same job, and they're especially in that beginning portion where they're looking at people that have a variety of different experience. It's easy to call out just from the eye when you see a lot of numbers in the bullet points. You see dollar signs, you see percentage signs, you see technologies. If you see that in the bullet points of the resume, that automatically is going to trigger something in that recruiter's head and say, okay, this person, may be pretty legit. Let me read a little bit further and see if it's a right correlation to the job. So those are things that are going to be visually appealing to the resume, in addition to all the other, formatting and other components that I hope and I discussed. But having those quantifiable results is key to moving forward in any process.
Now we'll have a question from someone who is a graduate student, and they say they would like to know, how can they make those skills that they have on being a graduate student, look transferable outside of academia?
Wow. Great question there, Mosika. Great question.
All right. So I'll take a stab and hope I'll leave time for you. So honestly, the work you're doing in grad school and even undergraduate is very relevant, because it's a small reflection of what you're going to anticipate in the workforce. And I'll give a couple of examples. So when it comes to projects, part of what I do all day, part of what Hope and Dewey all day are leading and kicking off projects and working with a lot of different people to do so. So if you're showing examples of work you did in graduate school to be a member of a team, which is what all of us are from Wells Fargo are on the call. Sometimes we have to play the lead role. Sometimes we have to play the support role. Sometimes we have to take on different responsibilities and work with multiple people. So all of that is very relevant to majority of corporate types of jobs you're going to be applying to. So that shows your ability to work as a team or lead a team or manage others, or depending on what your experience is. The other example I was going to say was the ability to work with multiple people in addition to the teamwork, and being able to communicate across different levels. A lot of times you're in meeting with executive leaders, sometimes you're in meeting with peers, sometimes you're in meeting with your direct boss, sometimes you're in meetings with people that don't necessarily know you. So you have to have pretty good presentation skills to be a part of a team, especially here at Wells Fargo. Half my job is presenting. So especially to be a part of a corporation, you have to show relevant examples of times where you've had to kick off a project, present information to a second party, and for them to digest that information in a reasonable manner and be able to take actions from that. So all of that is very relevant in grad school. Those are just two examples of things you can do, but there's others that go into a little bit more, depending on the industry and jobs you're applying to, that can go into maybe a little bit more technical or financial, depending on the actual work you're studying or major you're studying. But all of that can translate easily into a professional career just by pulling nuggets from what you're doing in school.
All right, so this will be our last question. And basically this question is about someone who has a large gap of time in their resume due to moving to a new country, creating a family, having children. And they say they've updated their skills through a master's degree, but they still haven't received a single interview. Any advice that you could give this person?
I can get us started, and Derek, if you want to add anything, of course. But I think, again, just going back to your resume is your story. And so I think that is the perfect opportunity to perhaps, again, to use that skill set, adding a skill set to your resume, utilizing your professional summary to say, I am ready to, move my professional career, things of that nature. But again, emphasizing those technical skills as well as the professional summary. And actually a lot of companies, including Wells Fargo, have returnship programs. So there is a specific niche. So for job opportunities like that, and Glide relaunch with Wells Fargo is actually, that application is currently open. If you did not get a chance to follow my LinkedIn, I do have that posting up there as well. But that returnship program is excellent. This is the first year that we'll have 2 cohorts going for the year of 2022. So definitely recommend that.
I'm glad you plugged that, Hope. That's why I let you take that question. So yeah, so to Hope's point, a lot of companies are doing returnships for those that have been out of the workforce for X amount of years. So that's even a part of your toolkit when it comes to the jobs you're applying to. Maybe that can be added to your search when you're starting to apply to different roles, and you can tailor your resume to fit whatever they're looking for in that role. But Hope hit all the key points. These are examples where you can maybe utilize that objective or professional summary, or maybe even a cover letter to speak to your gap of employment, and then but still have relevant examples of how your experience can correlate throughout the resume. But Hope hit it all.
This was a dynamic and robust conversation. Thank you so much, Derek and Hope. Thank you to the audience for those insightful questions. And I appreciate the transparency that we all shared today. So this concludes our question and answer portion, and I will pass it to Dewey.
Mozika, thank you for masterfully facilitating the Q&A. And Hope, 5 gold stars for you. Derek, 3.3 gold stars for you. No, I'm kidding. It's 5.
I need it after all those questions.
Listen, man, you was working. You had the water bottle and everything.
Working hard.
They had you working. No, listen, it's 5 stars across the board. And again, Mozika, thank you. So many items there. Here's what I will add, team, for some final reminders. If you did not get an opportunity to get your question answered here real time, we had a lot that came in. Use the follow-ups. Get in contact with Hope. Get in contact with Derek. Get in contact with Mozika after the broadcast, and let's find ways to continue the conversation. Some really, really great information there. Hey, some quick reminders as we kind of close things out for today. Just some quick items that we want to touch on here right as we're going to the end. We're always interested in feedback. Please take a moment, scan the QR code that's here on the screen. That's going to take you to our feedback page. We're always interested in getting thoughts from you, from attendees and folks that watch the replay of what we've shared. Take a minute, fill out the survey for us. We will also be sending an email out to you all over the next couple of days. So special thanks to Angel and the team that will be doing those items. So you'll see that. Take 2 minutes, fill out the survey for us, give us feedback so we can continue to refine our processes from there. Some additional reminders here as we continue on to the next slide. Beyond College, up and running, a day in the life, still available for you. You'll see on the next slide the breakouts for everything that we've covered here during our first 3 sessions. As a reminder, you can access all of this content a couple of days from now on TMCF's YouTube channel. Well, we've got now 3 almost completed, so you can access those. Do us a favor. If you spotlighted something that you really enjoyed or something really jumped out to you, throw it on your social media handles. Throw that playback link out there. Mention, Derek, mention Hope, mention Mozika, mention other partners that we're on, and let's spotlight and find a way to celebrate the information with others that could not join us here real time. So you see the breakouts. We'll be back again later this month for a discussion around interviewing, and then of course, budgeting and money management. I've got some special details that we may be sharing about that event here in the days ahead. And then also our session in May focused on, I think it's student debt. When we get into June, we're going to be talking salary versus value. You've got to be with us on July the 28th. I want us to have 5,000 students on for the career and internships. You all can help us get to that number for that particular session. Of course, in August, discussions around leadership brand. September spotlight around graduate school and the processes there. Always a fun panel for us. We'll be unboxing credit during Get Smart About Credit Month, in October, and then social media smarts for today's digital world will wind us out in November. So you've got the breakouts there. As we continue on, you'll see some details here on the next slide around Our Money Matters. I'd love for folks to just go and visit the OurMoneyMatters.com website. Special thanks to our buddy Bonnie Wallace and the great partners in our financial health group that are spotlighting work here. Our Money Matters is a really great platform for you to start building a strong financial future. I would encourage everyone to go and visit this website, create a profile out there, and learn about some of the wonderful resources that are available for you. So we love OMM, and Bonnie, thanks for pointing us in their wonderful direction. Last couple of items here. I think we've also now got the playback on the next slide for our A Day in the Life series. This is actually playback for the 4th installment that we hosted. So shout out to our buddy Lear Bear and all of our partners in the Corporate Investment Bank, Danielle Squires and others for the great work that's happening there. Scan this QR code. That'll take you to the playback team. Please note there is a passcode here. You must enter that entire passcode, including the special character there in all caps, to be able to access the playback. Session run is about 2 hours, but it is chock full of some really great information. So please jump in there. That series is scheduled to come back here right around May of 2022. So probably right around graduation time, maybe slightly before, but stand by for additional information there from A Day in the Life. And I think in the days ahead, you're going to see more and more A Day in the Life events spinning up from other lines of business, whether it's technology or wealth and investment management or public affairs. So stand by for more of those great breakout discussions and panels. All right, I think we're really getting down to the last items here. The next slide will give you a few details with some reminders. Of course, the talent community, you've got to get involved there. Huge thanks to any of our partners that are on that have maybe served in the military and are looking for recruitment opportunities there. Get in contact with our buddy Sean Passmore and the team in that space via the military recruiting email address. Tuition funding sources, many of you all may have gotten to this webinar by way of an email from TFS. So please get connected into TFS, create that profile, whether you're a high schooler that's on with us. And we've got our high schoolers here today. We need to shout out Francis Lewis High School and Shades Valley High School and Walton High School. I think had the most here. We got Central High, we got Sickles High, Sparkman High in the mix as well. So whether you're a high schooler, whether you're a college student, or whether you're working on a master's degree or doctoral program, you can get resources from tuition funding sources. Get connected in there. And as we've mentioned a couple of times already, beyond college. All right, I think the last slide just gives us some reminders around where to join us. So we'll be back in action here a couple of weeks from now, I guess 3 weeks from or so from today, for a discussion on interviewing. So that's really kind of a part 2 from what you've heard here today. So please make sure you join us for that. Don't forget, register in advance. That way we can get your questions pre-submitted. And then this also gives us the ability to follow up with you after the broadcast relative to things. I want to thank Mozika, want to thank the entire team. Noelle is also in the background working. Of course, we've got to shout out Betsy from the TMCF team. Let's see who else. Jeremy's also in the background working too, getting things done. So special thanks to all of those partners for the good things that they're doing on their side. And then special thanks, Hope, to you and also to Derek for the great information that you all shared. We've also got in the background today, Ruth Amandades and also Angel Hyman doing really great work. And so special thanks to all of our partners, scholars. I hope that you can use this information to build a stronger resume. Use this insider's information to help you for the next phase of things from here. Everyone continue to stay safe. Enjoy your spring break. Enjoy that time with family, or maybe if you're traveling, just continue to be safe in those kinds of areas. And then let's come back to campus here in a week and a half or so, And let's make sure that we are really focusing in on having a strong finish here to our spring semester with things. We look forward to seeing you all next time around. Everyone have a great rest of your day. We'll talk with you soon. Till next time, everybody. Take care.